He stutters.
Harry Potter.
He smells of garlic. He wears a purple turban he claims was a gift from an African prince. He is jumpy, nervous, pale, a man who seems to have been frightened by something he hasn't quite recovered from and possibly never will. He teaches defense against the dark arts with all the authority of someone who has never been in a dark place in their life. He is, by every visible metric, the least threatening person at Hogwarts. And underneath the turban, literally sharing his skull, is the most dangerous dark wizard in a century. But who was Quirrell before the turban? Because here's the thing nobody talks about. Quirrell's story, when you actually pull it apart, is one of the darkest character studies in the entire series. A quiet, brilliant, ordinary man who wanted something, went looking for it and found something that destroyed him instead. And the worst part, the part that changes everything, is that he went looking on purpose. Let's start with the name, because Rowling buried an almost unreasonable amount of information in it. Quirinus Quirrell, 2 Qs, which is either a profound parental decision or a clerical error, and it turns out both halves of that name are doing something entirely different, and together they paint a portrait of the man so precise it borders on unfair. Start with the first name, Quirinus. The official Wizarding World etymology, from Rowling's own notes, traces this to Roman mythology, where it translates loosely as spear or wielder of the spear. It was also the name of the Sabine god of war, an ancient pre-Roman deity associated with battle, with domination, with military conquest. The man named after a war god and a spear wielder is afraid of his own shadow, but here's the layer that makes it genuinely interesting rather than just ironic. The official source describes Quirinus as a name synonymous with battle and domination, and then notes that it is a good fit for Lord Voldemort, the man who dominated him. The name doesn't belong to Quirrell. It was always Voldemort's name to carry. Quirrell was just wearing it. There's one more mythological thread here. Quirinus was also called the Oak God. Hold on to that, because the surname picks it up. Now, Quirrell. This is where it gets almost absurdly layered. The surname traces back to the Middle High German Eichhorn, meaning oak horn. In Old English, that became Aquorna, and Aquorna, through centuries of linguistic drift, became the modern English word. Squirrel. Quirrell means squirrel. Now, before you dismiss that as a throwaway joke, let's follow it properly, because the Wizarding World etymology pulls out 2 distinct meanings of squirrel in modern usage, and both apply with uncomfortable precision. The first, squirrel as a personality type. Someone twitchy, easily distracted, hard to pin down, nervous energy, darting attention, never quite still, which is, of course, the entire performance Quirrell gives every day of his working life at Hogwarts. The second, and this is the one, squirreling away, the act of hiding something, storing something out of sight for later use. Quirrell had Voldemort squirreled away beneath his turban. Rowling named her hidden villain after the act of hiding things and the animal that does it. She then made him jumpy and twitchy, squirrel-like, as his primary cover, and she tied the surname to the same oak symbolism as the first name, threading the entire thing into one coherent portrait across 2 words. Whether that's coincidence or foreshadowing depends entirely on how much credit you're willing to give a woman who named a werewolf Remus Lupin. So, who was he actually? Quirrell was a Hogwarts student, confirmed by Pottermore as a Ravenclaw. The house of intellect, curiosity, and the specific kind of pride comes from believing the right answer exists, and you're capable of finding it. He was, by every account, a genuinely gifted student, academically exceptional, intellectually curious to a degree that his professors apparently found remarkable. He graduated, pursued further study, and eventually returned to Hogwarts as a member of staff. Here's the first detail most people don't know. Quirrell did not start as the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. He was originally the Muggle Studies teacher. Sit with that for a moment. The man who would eventually be physically occupied by Voldemort, a wizard whose entire ideology was the subjugation and destruction of non-magical people, spent years enthusiastically teaching a course designed to foster understanding of Muggle culture. There's a version of this story where that's just ironic. There's another version where it tells you everything about who Quirrell was before things went wrong. A man interested in bridges between worlds. A man drawn to understanding rather than fear. The Muggle Studies professor, sharing a skull with Lord Voldemort. The irony could power a small city. Here's the detail that fundamentally reframes everything. Quirrell didn't stumble into Voldemort. He didn't wander into the wrong forest. He wasn't in the wrong place at the wrong time. Quirrell requested a sabbatical from Dumbledore directly, specifically to go and find Voldemort. Let that land. According to Pottermore's expanded lore, Quirrell had grown restless. He was clever, yes, talented, yes, but he felt, and this is the exact kind of Ravenclaw hubris that tends to end badly, that his education had been too sheltered, too theoretical. He had read about dark magic, studied it academically, understood it in the way you understand a hurricane by looking at a diagram. He wanted to encounter it directly. He believed that first-hand experience of the dark arts would make him a more capable defense teacher. Here is where we need to stop and ask a question the books don't ask explicitly. A man with Voldemort in his head has every reason to be terrified. That part is real. But Quirrell is also a Ravenclaw. He is academically brilliant. He is, by every account, intellectually precise. He understood dark magic well enough to seek it out, to communicate with what remained of Voldemort in an Albanian forest, and to survive that initial encounter long enough to be possessed. This is not a man whose brain stopped working. So look again at what the performance of helplessness actually achieved. From the moment Quirrell returns to Hogwarts, jumpy, stammering, smelling aggressively of garlic, tripping over his own sentences, every single person around him draws the same conclusion. This man is not a threat. Not Dumbledore, not McGonagall, not the students. Nobody looks at Quirinus Quirrell and thinks, this is the person I need to watch. They look at Snape instead. And Snape, who is in fact completely loyal to Dumbledore, who is in fact actively trying to protect Harry, who is in fact the most suspicious-looking person in any room he's ever been in. Every moment Harry and Hermione and Ron spend convinced that the greasy potions professor is the one trying to steal the stone. Quirrell engineered this, not entirely consciously perhaps. Some of the fear genuinely leaked through, but the amplification of it, the performance of it, the particular flavor of incompetence he projected, that was calculated. A Ravenclaw who understood precisely what people see when they see a frightened man, not a threat. A background character, someone to feel slightly sorry for and then look past. In Philosopher's Stone, a mountain troll gets into Hogwarts on Halloween. Quirrell bursts into the Great Hall, announces it in a theatrical panic. Troll! In the dungeon! And then he fainted in front of the entire faculty to make absolutely certain nobody was thinking about him for the rest of the evening.
Thought you ought to know.
That is not a man who is merely frightened. That is a man who understands that a convincing performance of helplessness is the most powerful cover story available. Fear, weaponized, incompetence, performed. The stammer deployed like a smokescreen. He fainted in the Great Hall. It worked perfectly. There's a specific brilliance to this that deserves naming. Quirrell chose a disguise that nobody would ever want to imitate. The socially awkward, physically trembling, garlic-reeking wreck of a man. Nobody aspires to that. Nobody suspects it. A dark wizard hiding behind a mask of obvious competence would have been found eventually. Suspicious competence gets noticed, but suspicious incompetence? That's just Professor Quirrell. Poor man. Never quite recovered from whatever happened on that trip. It is genuinely one of the most effective con jobs in the series, because it exploited the most reliable bias in human psychology. We do not look for danger in people who appear to be suffering. Quirrell understood that. The cowardice was real, the stutter was not. He was a Muggle studies teacher who died hosting the Muggle Hater. He was named after a war god and was afraid of everything. He was a Ravenclaw who discovered too late that some knowledge costs more than it gives. He was, for 1 year, the defense against the dark arts professor, and he had absolutely no idea how to defend against the dark.